Hi there, I'm Lee Baring, Managing Director of the Specialist Works, and I'm here to present a bespoke media update for marketeers at Entrepreneurial Brands. We believe you've got unique challenges, and we believe there are key things you should know about what's coming up in the next 12 months. So we're going to take a deep dive into our special media update and update you on the challenges ahead. What's important to know about this deck is it's not your typical media update. So you're probably not going to find out what the biggest movie of 2025 was. It was Minecraft, by the way. You're probably not going to find out the reach of the newspapers. You're probably not going to find out the biggest TV program, because let's be honest, you could find all that stuff out with ChatGPT, right? That's the disruption of AI. That's what it's bringing to us. What we are going to be taking a look at, though, is the trends that are really affecting media effectiveness and how media should be driving real business results for your business. Now, one of the big trends that we've seen over the last 10 years is the deterioration of the correlation of the excessive share of voice model. So Professor Karen Nielsen-Field has been doing great work, and she presented this at Cannes almost 2 years ago now. But what she was looking at is the widening gulf between the price of an impression and the attention it delivers. That share of voice is untethering from share of market. And one of the big reasons for this, or the three big reasons we identify for this, is fragmentation, the rise of AI, and attention planning or impression equality. Not all impressions are born equal, and it's really important to understand the effect that your advertising is having. So let's start with attention planning, and let's go back to Professor Karen Nielsen-Field and use a quote from Hacking the Attention Economy in 2025. Brands are too often focused on the time their ad is in view, but it's the time that it's actually viewed that actually matters. Active attention. And that's what we're looking at here in the new world of marketing, because there's so many options to place your ad that you need to understand the impact and the interaction it's having with your audience. And there's many studies that prove that the more attention a channel drives, the more business effects it will also drive. So we've seen the correlation between attention efficiency and the driving of ROI. We know that to be true. And video is a key element, a key factor, a key metric of driving attention. So to put this into context, let's zoom out a little bit and look at the entire market. We know that since COVID, ad spend has been growing every single year. And the channels that have been growing have been those digital performance channels, search, social. They've been the ones that are seeing that super growth. And the more traditional channels have been seeing a decline in ad spend. And that leads us to really question the channel mix. Are we spending too much or too little at the bottom or the top of the funnel? Because attention and the importance of attention is really driven by those top of the funnel metrics, those top of the funnel channels, TV, cinema, press, radio, out of home, online video. And the bottom of the funnel tends to capture that demand that is being driven by them. So why is it increasing so much? If you take a closer look at it, you can see that actually what's increasing that bottom of the funnel spend are the very smallest advertisers that exist in the UK. They could be the one-man bands, the shop on the high street, the businesses that are set up in people's bedrooms and the like, because advertising has become democratized. Everyone can advertise everyone can run a search campaign. Anyone can access a social media campaign. And therefore, they're going to be the channels that see that growth. They're going to be the channels that are easy to access, because it's really, really hard to get on to those big broadcast channels. And that's because there's a shift in quality, there's a shift in governance, and there's a shift in the hoops and budgets that you need to find. So why is that important? Well, if you look at the Advertising Association or WARC ad spend, you'll see that there's a roughly 3/4 of spend is going into search, going into online digital channels, and 25% of spend is going into those more offline channels, those traditional brand channels. However, if you remove that really long tail of small advertisers, that completely shifts around. And then you see the mix for established advertisers, medium to large advertisers, as the report calls it. The mix becomes 60% in favor of those big top line brand channels and 40% for those performance channels. And that starts to make us feel a bit more comfortable, right? Because now we all remember the Bennett and Field, we remember the long and short of it, the 60-40 split, and now it starts to look more normal. So if we're comparing our channel mix versus those WARC studies, we have to take into account that it's taken in all the advertising industry and not those major advertisers which we are predominantly up against. So we said at the very beginning of attention planning, what formats drive the best attention, and it's video. It's the standout channel. That could be in the form of TV, could be in the form of cinema, could be in the form of online video. Whatever video it is, it's always going to drive more attention because it is multisensory. It attacks our ears and it attacks our eyes. And basically we can see that the cost per attentive second is so much more efficient in video formats. Let's talk about TV, right? Because TV has changed. A quote from Thinkbox many years ago is TV's having babies. Well, those babies, they've grown up now and they're full-blown teenagers and they're rebelling against the world and changing the way we consume TV. The good for the consumer, maybe not so good for the advertiser. So we've got linear TV, of course everyone knows that, ITV1, Channel 5, Channel 4, Sky channels, all those kind of guys. And then you've got broadcaster VOD. And broadcaster VOD opens up that bucket of CTV. So in there we've got ITVX, Channel 4, you've then got commercial SVOD, so now we have Netflix, Prime, you've then got fast channels, which are a form of TV, but they're not on demand. And then you've got AVOD, which YouTube is the clear lead on. And these channels are excellent for driving attention. So we know that TV is the premium aspect of video, and therefore video, it becomes the premium way of driving attention. And we know that it drives the most cost-effective attention per second as well. So if you are going to go into TV, max out your linear, have a look at the CTV platforms and see what you can work with there. But don't believe the hype. There's still a lot of viewing, there's still loads of reach to be made in TV. It's still the dominant platform, and the CTV market really struggles from fragmentation. However, the aspect that we really want to touch upon just very quickly would be YouTube. YouTube is a platform that's viewed in one big bucket. Basically, everyone seems to treat YouTube and talk about YouTube as just one thing, but YouTube is made up of many, many, many different aspects. And we plan YouTube, especially on CTV, in a very specific way. We plan to that premium market, that broadcast quality. Now, why do we do that? Well, if you're going to sit down and watch a half-hour program on YouTube, that's a commitment you're going to make, and you're willing for that commitment to in exchange receive advertising. And that advertising might be 30 seconds, it might be a minute, but that's a fair exchange. A minute of advertising for 30 minutes of content. But if you're going to sit and watch the 2-minute shorts or the 30-second clip, that's not a fair exchange. You don't want equal advertising to equal content. So therefore, the attention and the mindset changes, and that increases the efficiency, that increases the impact of the advertising, which is why when we are starting to use YouTube, we use YouTube for very different things. If we're using YouTube at the top of the funnel, we plan it very specifically. If we're using YouTube at the bottom of the funnel, it's planned very differently again. But if we use YouTube to drive attention, it's to go into those large formats, those long form programs, those broadcast quality, where you don't really see the massive difference between TV and online video. The lines start to blur, and it's still driving effectiveness. Next topic on attention is mindset, because mindset really matters, right? If you're in a cinema, you've got a massive screen there. You're there, you'll sit back, all your attention is focused on that screen. And if we are advertising on that screen, it's clear your message. If it's up and people are paying attention, that they're going to see it and it's going to sink in. Think about the gamer. Now, the gamer is really focused on their screen. Now, if we're walking around Grand Theft Auto and we've got an out-of-home ad in the background, is the gamer seeing it? Maybe not. One of the key reasons is that gamer is hyper-focused on one aspect of their screen. They're focused on the bit they're in control of, not the surrounding area. So therefore, their mindset comes in, and that really, really matters in advertising and where we choose to place your content. A really good example is Facebook, or the world of Meta, versus TikTok. Now, TikTok is a platform that is built for entertainment. It's full screen, the algorithms that are there to keep you locked in. They've got their own advertising platform to encourage you to make ads that are native to the platform. And the feed is so easy and you move through, right? You're there to be entertained. It's an entertainment platform. Whereas on Meta, Facebook specifically, you're there to connect. It's not full page. You might want to catch up with what your friends are doing, or what your family is doing, or the latest photos of the niece or your nephews or your dogs or your cats, whatever it might be. What you're not there for, though, is to be entertained. And that then comes out in the measures and the metrics that the two platforms drive. TikTok is much, much more efficient at driving attention. It has a higher dwell time, it has a higher viewability rate, and people are spending hours and hours on there every single month to be entertained. Whereas Meta has lots of uses, is great for performance, but it's not so good at driving brand awareness because it doesn't have that same engagement rate, it doesn't have that same attention, it doesn't have that same dwell time, because people are using the two platforms very, very differently, but they come into those platforms with very, very different mindsets. Let's next talk about the impact of AI. Now, as I said at the very beginning, we're not going to talk about how all the wonderful things that AI is doing, how it can improve lots and lots of different things. We're going to focus on AI and media. And specifically, we're going to talk about LMMs and we're going to talk about AIOs, AI overviews. So first and foremost, LMMs, we're talking about here your Copilots, your Chat GPTs, and the likes, and what they are doing and how they're influencing media. Now we know that Chat GPT will be coming up with advertising very soon. It is very much in its infancy. We don't know how humans are going to react to that, how consumers are going to react to that. So we do need to see. So that's a very much watch this space. But LMMs have obviously had a huge impact on different markets. Now, one of the things we have seen is that LMMs are taking away traffic from established suppliers. So let's just say the latest news comes out. So Harry Styles potentially got engaged. Do you go to Google and type in, did Harry Styles get engaged? Or do you potentially go to ChatGPT and type in the same question? If I go to ChatGPT and get the answer of that question from ChatGPT, I'm now denying the platform or the supplier I was going to go to my impression, my view. The knock-on effect of that is that as an advertiser, you no longer can reach me. You can't share my message. If you particularly want to reach Harry Styles fans, I'm now gone. I'm out of that tunnel. I'm out of that funnel. So you can't get me from there. So that's the first effect that we're seeing from LMMs. Secondly, AI overviews. Now you probably have experienced these. I imagine if you use Google as a search engine, you see it quite regularly. You type in, is Harry Styles engaged? And all of a sudden, rather than get the load of paid search messages that come up, what you get come up is an AI overview. Google Gemini's version of the news that you've asked to be updated upon. Now that is also a problem, because what that first of all does is all the people who have paid to be featured next to AI overviews, they get pushed down below the fold so you can't see it. And secondly, I'm getting that news served to me again from Gemini and not from, say, the Mail Online, where I could advertise around that content. That also has a big knock-on effect in terms of different sectors. So there was a really good study done in terms of the amount of times these AI overviews feature for different markets and different sectors of business. And it was found that in terms of health, if you type in one keyword, so if you type in headache, you have a 35% chance of being served an AI overview rather than being served the full listing of paid advertising. Why is that important? It's extremely disruptive to that search funnel, and it makes it much, much harder to convert your consumer at the bottom of the funnel. And now the very, very last section, and it might feel a strange one. It might feel like something we've not really been spoken about or even really thought about, but it's certainly a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for us as a media agency, and in turn that becomes a challenge for our clients and our entrepreneurial brands. Talking about fragmentation. So let's go back to 1995 and look at the top programs that aired during that year. Now, the biggest program of the year was the Panorama special interviewing Princess Diana. It reached 23 million people. Imagine that as a number, 23 million people viewing one program. Now, obviously it was on the BBC, so it wasn't commercial. So the biggest advertising opportunity on TV that year was Coronation Street, and it reached 20 million people, or just short of. Now let's fast forward to 2025. The top program from last year, I'm sure many of you watched it, Celebrity Traitors, just under 16 million people. Wouldn't even get into the top 10 shows from 1995, which is an amazing stat if you think about it. Again, non-commercial. So the biggest first commercial opportunity was actually on an SVOD platform. It was Netflix Adolescence, reached just over 13 million people. And then you had I'm a Celebrity on ITV1, which reached just over 10 million people. The differences in those sizes is monumental. There aren't those moments anymore where you're bringing together a quarter of the nation to watch one single program. And that brings with it a lot of positives, but some negatives as well. The positive is, as consumers, we've got loads of choice. We can watch any program we want, whenever we want, right? We can create our own schedules. We haven't got to wait anymore to be served our programs. We can go and binge it all in one go, which is fantastic from a consumer perspective. But from the advertising perspective, it means this fragmentation really hurts the reach efficiency. It's so hard to reach those big globs of people in one go anymore that we have to use multiple platforms, multiple programs to do it. And that in turn harms the efficiency of building reach, which in turn harms the effectiveness of a campaign. This fragmentation hasn't only occurred in TV, we see it across loads of other channels as well. Take a look at press. The press market, the off-the-page market has decimated in terms of versus the digital market. But news brands themselves still reach huge numbers. 30 million people per week will touch base with a news brand, but they do it in very, very different ways now via the digital website or via the linear page. Look at out of home. No longer do we have lots and lots of traditional media, paper and paste placements going up, which can stay up for weeks on end. Now we have digital platforms, which are brilliant because they're much brighter, they capture attention much quicker. But all of a sudden, rather than being the solus advertiser on that format, you are now one of 6. So again, the attention is better, but your opportunity to see drops. And last but not least, audio. Now, radio is a platform that I didn't think would ever change. And I still believe that in 30, 40 years' time, we'll still want to tune into some kind of show in the morning whilst we're eating our cereal. But if you look at how the market has fragmented and the explosion of digital and the rise of podcasts, you start to see where that fragmentation comes in. But to put this into perspective, if you took the top 25 podcasts in the UK and you advertised on those across one full week, you would reach around about 14% of the entire UK population. If you did one spot on Heart across the Heart network, you'd reach 25% of the population. And that is the difference. That is the challenge that we face. While you've got these really rich and attention-grabbing content like podcasts, which is huge for engagement and a fantastic platform to advertise in, the fragmentation that benefits the consumer, the choice that you have, is the very thing that makes it hard for the advertiser to cut through. Because to reach a mass audience in podcast marketing, you have to use a lot of different podcasts. Whereas in linear radio, you can use a handful of stations and reach a huge amount of people. Now, the other thing about fragmentation is trust. With the explosion of new channels, we can't assume that the same level of trust is placed on those channels. Brands that have been around for a long, long while will carry that trust through. The BBC, ITV, Heart, they have an inherent trust that's there. Whereas the new social media platforms, Meta, TikTok, they carry an inherent distrust, especially by the media and especially by the news that we see every single day. AI has brought a whole other level of trust questions in. Fake news, content, is it real, is it not? The other scary thing about this is that truthful content that is real, can then be undermined. Oh, that's not real, that's fake. I didn't see that, I didn't do that, that's fake AI, you must have made that up. And that brings in a whole new level of complications to the media planner and to brands themselves, because we want to be in environments that we're trusted, so that means our advertising can be more trusted as well. And it's really interesting to see how that trust is starting to move. So if we move away from those traditional channels, one of the big areas of trust and the big areas which we can see is growing is influencers. And that influencers we think of as people on maybe YouTube or TikTok, and they are influencers themselves, but influencers should also be thought of as people who host podcasts, or people who or celebrities themselves, or presenters, or any kind really. But people, the consumer or the everyday consumer, is placing a lot of trust in the individual person. And if as a brand you can make that connection via that person, they can be the conduit to endorse your product, then you're going to unlock a really, really powerful tool. And that will build trust, but it also grabs attention. Now, the last area of fragmentation actually lies within your control. Not my control, you guys, the marketeers at Entrepreneurial Brands. And that is your distinctive brand assets. It's something that Professor Mark Ritson talks about a lot, and it really does influence campaigns. If you think about in digital media, again, another Karen Nielsen field study, she identified that basically you get an average of 3 seconds on online media to get someone's attention. That's it, 3 seconds. And if you've got a distinctive brand asset, think about those biggest brands in the world, someone like the McDonald's M's, all you need to do is see a quarter of that M and you understand that it's a McDonald's ad. And that means that actually when you've got distinctive brand assets, you only need 1.5 seconds for your ad to be recognized. So in this ever increasing fragmented media world, the one thing that can remain consistent and should remain consistent to help you cut through, to help you get the most attention you can get, to help you power the top of the funnel so that when people are searching in those LMM models, they're going to find your brand, is your brand itself. That is those distinctive brand assets. Keep them consistent, keep them vibrant, keep them front of mind. Make sure they really have the focus in your advertising you can get them, because that will maximize the effectiveness of your campaign and go out and tackle the fragmented world that we now live in. So that's it, the whistle-stop tour of our 57-page deck. This deck is going to be coming out, and we welcome questions. If you have got it, please come and get in touch. The 3 things that we spoke about, the 3 things that we believe we're going to be focusing on for the next 12 months at the very least, is attention planning, the rise of AI and the disruption that's causing the media funnel, and fragmentation, and how to plan for effective reach. So if you've got any questions, if you've liked what you've heard or like what you've seen, or need to go into any one of these topics in more detail, reach out to your client director. We're more than happy to answer via email or just even come and see you as well. See you next time. Cheers.